or research design. Welcome everyone to week 3 training. Thank you so much for joining and for keeping to time. I'm starting now. So yeah, we'll be looking at study design or research design. If you are carrying out a project or you're carrying out a research, it follows a particular plan. It follows a particular uh, procedure. So what does study design or what does research design mean? You know, it is a builder, or rather it is your blueprint, it is your guide, it is a plan that you have when you are carrying out your research. So yeah, I said that it was written here that it just as a builder needs a plan before laying bricks, a researcher needs a design before collecting data. You need a blueprint, you need a guide before collecting data. What is the goal of having a research design or a study design? It is to ensure the evidences addresses the research problem logically and as unambiguous as possible. So you want to ensure that you have your research design. You want to ensure that every steps or every procedure your research work is following, it is as precise, it addresses the core problem, the research problem. For example, you cannot be doing an experimental studies and be collecting surveys. You cannot be doing um, a review study and then collecting questionnaires or data from existing journals, depending on the kind of review you are doing. So the goal of the design is to ensure that your work or the evidences that your research questions are presenting, the findings, they are logical and they are specific to the research problem. For example, if you are using a questionnaire and you say, oh, your questionnaire is collecting data that are not in numbers, then your procedure, your study design should be stated in your method. It's very, very important. So your design determines the level of evidence. High impact journals prioritizes study design that minimize biases. So we have different kind of study design. We are going to be looking at them in this training, so that when you are doing your research work, you can understand which and which. Are you doing an experimental study? Are you doing a qualitative study? Are you doing a review study? Are you doing a study that you want to see the effect of two interventions or two programs? That's a randomized control trial. So all these terminologies, we are going to be understanding them, and I'm going to be citing examples, and then you can know the kind of, if you are doing any research work or any project per se, you would understand the kind of study design that you are to do. So now there's a particular framework we call the PICO framework. The PICO framework is a simple framework that is used to structure research question in the study design. For week 1 training and week 2 training, we spoke about the basics of research and literature review. And for every research or every project that you want to carry out, there must be a research question. It is from your research question that you get your research topic. For example, I want to ask a research question. Now, a research question is a question, but a research problem is a statement. Let me ask my research problem. My research problem, for example, might be social media use among young people aged 18 to 25 has led to academic decline. That is a research problem. That is a statement problem. That is something that is worth investigating. If I want to draft my research question, I'm going to turn that research statement problem into a question. Does social media use among young people aged 18 to 25 lead to academic decline? Question mark. That is my research question. So my PICO framework is used to structure my research question in my study design. The P is for population. It identifies who is being studied. So now, my population that is being studied in my example cited previously is young people aged 18 to 25. The I is for intervention. What treatment or exposure is being tested? In my cited example, it should be social media use. My C is comparison or comparator, any of which you want to call it. What is being compared to? This is basically for experimental studies, but just know this framework. You can use it to break down any research question or any research topic. While my O is outcome. What result is being measured? So from my cited example, does social media use among young people aged 18 to 25 lead to academic decline? So I'm comparing social media use and academic decline. Of course, my outcome is academic decline or academic status for those particular students, for this population, which is young people in the age bracket 18 to 25. So the PICO framework helps you to frame your study design, to structure your research question so you can know what exactly you are measuring, what are you looking for, and what kind of research design or study design that you are carrying out. Don't forget that study design or research design is a plan, a blueprint that helps or guides your project. Now let's look at some examples. I have the example one: hypertension drug study. P is adult, which is population, adult with hypertension. I is the intervention or the drug. So I wrote here that intervention is what is the treatment or what is the exposure, right? Why C is the comparison. If you are comparing it to a standard or comparing it to something, O is the outcome or the result. What does this particular drug lead to? Does it lead to any change in blood pressure? So the question says, in adults with hypertension, that is a research question, is lisinopril more effective than amlodipine in reducing blood pressure? Lisinopril and amlodipine are example of antihypertensive drug. So if I want to structure it in the PICO framework, I have P, I've gotten my adult with hypertension. If I want to make my question more detailed, I can say, okay, in adults or in patients. Patients can vary from adults to babies and everything, but it is good to have a very niche down research question so that your research objective can be clear. If you have a broader research question, it is too broad. You understand? You are going to do a complex study. So, of course, the population is adult with hypertension. The intervention, what is being tested, what is being used is lisinopril. The comparison, we are comparing it to a drug, which is amlodipine, and the outcome of the result is a change in blood pressure. In this case, a reduction in blood pressure. And example two is a malaria study. The research question says, in patients with malaria, is patient with malaria, or rather, I don't know the typo in this research question, but what this particular question is trying to say is that uh, in patients with malaria, okay, is artemether and lumefantrine more effective than chloroquine in clearing parasites? That is in um, clearing the malaria parasite. The population, of course, is patients with uncomplicated malaria. The intervention drug or the one being tested for is artemether slash lumefantrine. The comparison the comparative group is chloroquine, while the outcome is parasite clearance rates. So your research design, when you first use the PICO framework, you can be able to pinpoint what and what you are going to be working with. Are you going to collect numbers? Are you going to collect um, experiences? Are you going to collect? Are you going to do the two at the same time? You get. So let's look at some of the types of study design. Now we have three broad type, or we have two main, but you can add one more. We have the quantitative and we have the qualitative. Now I'm speaking this in terms of data, right? Let me just, or I should just take this as broad type of study design. Quantitative from the word quantity. So it talks about the numbers. It answers the question how many or how much. So the objective of this type of study design is that it seeks to generalize findings to a population. Oh, 50% people experience a change or a reduction in blood pressure when they take lisinopril. for their hypertensive crisis. Some of the tools for quantitative study include surveys to get percentage, to find how many or how much, to get the frequency, clinical trials, or that is human experiment, clinical trials, experimental research, lab experiment, and the likes. They have to do with numbers, one way or the other. They generalize findings to a population. We have the qualitative or the word study. It answers the question why and how much. It is subjective. So the first one is objective. That is why if you are doing an experiment, you are observing, you are speaking from a standpoint of an observer, not from a standpoint of okay, I think or it is believed. Not it is not personalized, it is objective. While qualitative is basically subjective, it seeks deep understanding of human experience, interviews, focus group, case studies, and the like. So let's say you want to do a um, a research about what people think about using herbs to treat chronic conditions. You want to find out how they think. You want to find out their perceptions, their belief, their knowledge. You want to identify the knowledge gap among, let's say, Nigeria or amongst South Africa, among a particular set or a particular population. That is a qualitative study. They're looking at the words, they're looking at the experience, the quality. We have the third one, which is a combination of the two. That is a mixed method. So we use a mixed method. That means a research design that contains both quantitative and qualitative um, design. It is used to get a 360 view of the problem, of the research problem. So my previous example says that does social media use among young people aged 18 to 25 leads to academic decline? I can do a mixed method study if I want to get a 360 view of everything that is happening. I can speak about their perception, what they think, their experiences. I can have interviews, I can have focus group, I can have case study, I can have different views. I can also take the percentage of how many people use social media. What is their academic status? How many people got 5.0 CGPA, 4.9 and the likes, 4.5? How many got second class lower? So I can have a mixed method for that particular kind of study. It gives my evidence, it makes my evidence stronger, like my findings. You get. So that is all for the three basic or broad types of study or research design. Now we have observational design, which of course you're acting as a spectator. You observe and measure without interfering, without drawing conclusion. Examples here are the cross-sectional study, which is a snapshot in time. So you want to get a snapshot in time of a particular thing in a particular population. For example, prevalence of hypertension today among, you can niche down your research question or your research topic. We have a cohort study. A cohort study is an example of observational study design. A cohort study basically says that you are following a group over time. So, for example, you are going, of course, forward in time. You are tracking 10 smokers for 10 years. A cohort study is an observational study. You are not doing anything, you are not interfering, you are not um, doing an experiment, you are not adding anything. You are taking two groups, group A and group B, and then you are doing a cohort study. You are saying, okay, let's look at this to group A. For example, group A are smokers, group B are non-smokers. Let's follow up on them. Let's look at what will happen over time. Let's go forward in time. It is also called a prospective study because you are looking forward in time. Let's look at them and let's look at um, what will happen to their lungs or what will happen to their body in general. So that is a cohort study. Now we have experimental study whereby you are now the interventionist. You are the one that is you are adding something, you are intervening, you are adding something there and also looking forward in time. You actively change something. An example of experimental study is the randomized control trials. This is the gold standard whereby you are comparing one group that has a drug and the other group that does not have a drug or that gets a placebo. So you can compare two groups. You can allow one to be exposed to a particular thing and get the other to be the control or to be exposed to a standard. That is a randomized control trials. So it is a controlled trials because it has a control group or a comparator group, and it is randomized because you want to reduce bias. You want to just pick different population and place them at a random between two groups. Let's look at this diagram that is gotten from the Ethiopian Public Health textbook or journal rather. So we have, I can, this, when it comes to study design, right? Different texts will classify study design or type of designs in different ways. But I'm trying to get a summary, a snapshot of everything. So I'm going to be explaining some things. Here we have a descriptive study to just describe. We are not doing anything for individuals and for population. For population, it is called an example is ecological study or correlational study. You are looking at how the environment, you understand, you are just describing, um, stat, um, statistically say, you can speak by statistics that Nigerians living in the diaspora, you can talk about Nigerians living in the inner cities, in the underdeveloped areas of Lagos. You can just describe, it's descriptive. You can speak about the ecological factor or how the environment, leads to a particular outcome. Maybe you're speaking about their financial status or the likes. For individuals, basically, we are looking at case reports, case series, or cross-sectional study. I already spoke about cross-sectional study being a snapshot at a point in time. Case series basically means just going, let's say you go to the hospital, you look at their case series. Case series is for different people with the same condition. You understand? So let's say in there's an outbreak of fever, you want to take a look at the reports. First of all, for individuals, it is called case reports. Let's look at this case. This is the report. The doctor will hand you over to the files and can look at the reports. It's just a pure description of the reports. For case series, it is individuals that have the same condition, so it is more than one person. And I'll move over to analytical studies. Can further group them into observational studies and experimental studies. Observational studies, we have comparative, when you're comparing between two groups and everything. I've explained cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional study can also be descriptive or it can be analytical, depending on the context. And then we have cohort study. I've already explained that one you are looking forward in time. You are tracking, following up on people for a measured outcome. Why for case control, from the word case and control. For case control, you are looking backward in time. For case control, an example given is that, let's say you have people that already have the condition, they already have the outcome, they're already presenting with signs. Let's say five people have fever, and then you want to look backward in time. What actually caused the fever? So we are going retrospectively. So for cohort study, it is forward in time, it is prospectively, looking forward in time. For case control, it is backward in time or retrospective. That's case control. To find out the causative agents. So you can see how these different study designs can determine or can give you a plan of, okay, what are the method, what are the procedures that your design or that your study research work should follow. And of course, we have experimental studies, which include therapeutic trials, that is the use of drug, or preventive trials, that is the use of preventive measures. Or let's say, for example, you want to create an awareness program among among young people, and you want to educate them about, let's say HIV, and stuff like that. That's a preventive program. I want to speak to pregnant women and how they can avoid uh, different conditions that happens during pregnancy and before pregnancy. So you are having an experimental study per se. You are intervening. You are doing an intervention. You are adding something. You are changing something. And what you are changing there is that you are either adding a knowledge gap or you are making the use, or you are using a particular substance, a particular drug, or a particular machine, a preventive machine. For example, checking your blood pressure is preventative, or preventive, you know, pap smear and the likes, preventive. So it guides your research work. You can study more. I will send some materials. You can study more on study design if you want to go a little bit deeper. So yeah, of course, again, is a broader view. It's still the same thing. Yeah, you can see that we have study designs, we have intervention. For experimentation, yes, we are intervening. For observation, we are not intervening. You can, I will send a slide. You can study some of the thing. Of course, don't forget that for cohort study, we are looking at people that are exposed, looking forward to an outcome. For case control, backward in time, we already have the outcome. Looking back in time to look at the causative agent or what they were exposed to. And of course, cross-sectional study, we are looking at exposure and outcome measured at the same time. It is a snapshot. And let's move forward. So, of course, when you're planning your um, research work, you should have a target. Who are you reaching? What are your goals? You should have a vision. You should have a strategy. How do you want to go about this in your data collection method? That will be our next training class, how to collect data, different tools for collecting data. You want to look at your planning, which is the study design or the research design, and also want to look at your analysis. That is, you want to analyze your work. So now I have different type of study design based on their quality of evidence. We have the case series or expert opinion, we have the concessional studies, case control, cohort studies, we have the experimental work or trials, or you can say clinical trials, and we have the highest kind, which is systematic review and meta analysis. Now I want to explain this. What does systematic review mean and what does meta analysis mean? I will start from meta analysis. In meta analysis, you are collecting primary studies. So let's say a scientist or a researcher did an RCT, a randomized control trials in 5 different hospitals. You collect that paper. You're going to collect 5 more papers or 10 more papers to review. That is a meta-analysis. You are collecting those papers, running a rigid and a strict statistical analysis on them to reduce bias, to find out strong evidence claims from these papers. Do the papers agree on one thing? Do they disagree? Are there limitations? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? That is the meta-analysis. That is the most highest kind that will present to us a better quality evidence. Yeah, I'm not doing any research. You are collecting, you are pulling paper from different sources. That's what we call pulling. Yeah, you are pulling paper from different sources and analyzing them. That is the highest kind to get quality evidence-based study. Now for systematic review, it's just like a literature review whereby you have to read different papers, group them, find out their findings and everything. But this one is a little bit different. For this systematic review, you are doing the same thing. You are pulling different paper, primary studies in particular, not secondary studies now. Primary studies like experimental studies, case control, cross-sectional studies, cohort studies. You are pulling them, bringing these papers together, and then synthesizing them. Do they disagree? Do they agree? I say it is a type of literature review, but this one it presents higher evidences, and you run an analysis, and you would have to reduce bias. When you are bringing literatures together, you are synthesizing them and the likes. That is for systematic review. I might tell an example to the group chat, but you can check online and you can also see examples, check on PubMed, see examples of a systematic review. That is a study on its own. It's a study design on its own. So you are bringing papers, synthesizing them, getting their findings, check if there are any biases to the study, and of course, drawing a conclusion. So an example is that I want to perform a meta-analysis or a systematic review of the use of let's say the use of antimeter lumefantrine in treating malaria. I will get different paper from different sources. I will put them together. I will check for biases. I would run an analysis on them, and then I would now draw the conclusion that okay, There are other therapies, there are other treatments for malaria, there are preventive measures. I will not conclude, I will not draw a conclusion. I will not say that hmm, based on my reviewed articles, I've done a systematic review about 8 articles. Now, before you would even arrive to that 8 articles, you must have screened thousands and thousands of articles. Like let's say, for example, 200 articles were screened. You are screening them, you are removing duplicates, you are looking at their abstracts, you are reading them. Are these ones fit for my review or for my meta-analysis? And then you now, of course, synthesize your final papers and draw conclusion. I cannot say, okay, malaria has been proven to be the best possible therapy. Sorry, anti-malaria such as antimetal lumefantrine has been proven to be the best therapy for treating malaria. So that is all about systematic review and meta-analysis. Of course, the hierarchy of the evidence, that's what I was explaining. This is the pyramid. The top tier is systematic review and meta-analysis. They have the highest reliability due to their rigor analysis, strictness in checking biases, strength and limitation of different studies and of different papers. We have the middle tiers, which are randomized control trials, cohort study, case control studies. We have the bottom tier, such as case reports, expert opinion, animal research. Those ones are like the lowest. They present the lowest findings. For example, you cannot say, oh, because it did not work in rats, and oh, because it worked in rats, then of course, this is an evidence that you should test this drug on human beings. No, it has to go through the highest kind of evidence-based study. So to compete globally, aim to move up the pyramid. So let's say you want to do a particular research. It's not enough to just get case series, what is the report, what is the expert opinion, has been done on animals before and everything. These are like the base, the lowest. Move up, and a cohort study, and of course experimentation or trials. I can do the highest kind, which is systematic review or run a meta statistical analysis. So that brings me to the end of, like I said, this is a very very brief subject. Do you have any question now for your